is advertised for this at the gun show. Crossroads of the West gun show allowed us to hand out flyers. We have about 3,500 out there. High School Kids for Guns is a group that just started yeah, we definitely need their help because they're the young folks. A lot of us people are getting on a little bit old in the tooth, as they say. You know, a lot of us when we were younger remember being able to take a gun to school. They used to have them in school. Oh yeah, that's true. Also, we had support from the Pink Pistols of Utah, Stonewall Shooting Sports, Utah Gun Exchange. Utah Gun Exchange actually has a big ad for us. They also supplied the cost for the sound system today. Thank you. Also like to thank Tom Faulkner who paid for the flyers. We also have Students for Liberty and Americans for America. Americans for America started off, they had over 800 people said they were going to be here today. Yeah. Now with that, and Women for Against Gun Control. I'm sorry, she didn't have her own name. Oh yeah. Sorry about that, I overlooked hers. Janelle's kind of hard to overlook too. And tracks for the sound system. And the sheriff's here. We have support from the Capitol Police here who sat there and said if there's any problems, we got their phone numbers to call them quickly. I just want to say one thing before I introduce the first speaker. We're all here for one thing. We want to keep our Second Amendment. We want to keep our gun rights. The media that doesn't want to sit there and give us any press. They just want to try to push an agenda. That agenda is to disarm us. Remember that every country that gets disarmed in the last century has had a genocide. Some of these people are already talking about the death of gun owners. They feel we're an old view of the country. But remember that our founding fathers put the Second Amendment in there for several reasons. The main reason is for us to protect ourselves against our own government for tyranny. Another reason for the Second Amendment is to protect ourselves, our personal selves, our family, our friends, our neighbors, and our country. Right now there's talk of war. In World War II, Yamamoto was afraid to attack the United States because all the guns behind every blade of grass is what he said. So that's the same thing. All these countries have always been afraid to attack us because of the civilian use of firearms. And I'll talk the rest of my speech later, but we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem, and that's going to be started by John Lee. Okay, well, I'll start it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remember what it said, to the republic. It is not the democracy. The democracy is four wolves and a sheep, and who's going to be forgiven?
Okay, go ahead. We're
Now that next first one for our guests here is Willa Ray, and if I mess up her name, I apologize. I've been trying to pronounce her name for several weeks. It's what do you expect from an Australian? So here, she grew up in Australia, spent some time in Britain, knows a lot about what they have done with their gun laws as far as confiscating from the civilians and the damage that is done there. So with no further ado, as they say,
Hey, what's up,
I let her speak.
Thank you. I always get very emotional with the national anthem here. And
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything you were saying. I'm in a gun rally.
it touches my heart, and I am so grateful to be here. More than most people here may even realize.
Yes,
Perhaps
I do.
my brother down there, he
Definitely.
will realize it.
Okay. I can bring that other trailer down probably next week.
I want to tell you
or
a
the end
few
of this
things
coming weekend,
about where we were
load it up
born and
bring it home.
raised. And I want to start
Just so
with a
that,
few
'cause I'm
little
sure that if you don't want it, you want to get it.
I want to start with a few little stories about what happens to the citizens of a country
No, I definitely
when
do. I've got multiple
they are disarmed,
like,
because
possibly
then they're
window
controlled.
covers,
At 3:30 a.m. one Saturday morning, a morning much like this morning, Benjamin Batterham, a 33-year-old Australian father, caught a man invading his little daughter's bedroom. She was 8 months
that'll
old.
work too.
He did what any decent man and
Okay,
father
sounds good,
would
man.
do,
Kyle's here with me.
and physically intercepted the disgusting piece of trash about to assault his daughter.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier.
He did not have a weapon.
Okay.
He had a heart of a father and fists of fury as he launched himself at the home invader, who was a very large man and later identified as a convicted rapist with a history of breaking and entering other people's homes. Despite the intruder being a huge man, Benjamin Batterham was fighting for his daughter and his wife, and with that sheer willpower and protective force, after a significant fight, he bested the invader and broke his neck. Yeah. He saved his family that early morning. His reward in Australia, arrested and charged with recklessly inflicting grievous bodily harm. When the intruder later died, those charges were increased to murder, and he got sent to prison. Think about that for a minute. Another man in Australia, Doug Dilder, a 90-year-old man going about his business one Friday evening at 7:30 p.m, making dinner. A masked intruder burst into his home, and he was bashed to within an inch of his life by the gutless assailant, leaving him with severe head injuries, a broken jaw, and a fractured eye socket. His home was robbed, and he was left to crawl in all his pain and humiliation, covered in his own blood, barely seeing where he was going, across to his neighbours, where he was transported to hospital and was listed as critical for some time. The coward attacker was never found. Australia's legal rulings on intruder assault and death come down to the concept of self-defence, and I think everybody here knows something that the vast majority of Australians, and particularly the Australian government, doesn't understand. We have a right to defend ourselves. And in Australia, they don't. They say they do, but they don't. In Australia, a man's home is not his castle. In 2012, the Australian courts awarded a man $50,000 after he was caught breaking into a pub and was bashed by the licensee. The pub owner lived there with his wife, so that was his home. The courts also ruled that the homeowner pay an additional $18,500 to the intruder's mother for the trauma of seeing her son injured. Really? In Australia, yes. So as you already know by now, I grew up in Australia, and back then there was a gun store in most strip malls. My dad taught me and my siblings how to shoot, how to hunt, and most importantly, how to respect the weapon. Back then, it was called common sense. One of my brothers had an M14 right next to his bed as a teenager. It didn't get up and shoot anyone either. We had guns and ammo through the house. We had friends, family and neighbours constantly visiting, and not once did anyone ever think about pointing a gun at another person. Ever. So what's happened between then and now? Well, in Australia, God was taken out of schools, and today most of those corner gun stores have been replaced with liquor stores. And now the vast majority of Australians are too addicted to alcohol and prescription drugs to be part of the strong hunting culture in which I was raised. A culture which saw me and my siblings learn how to be self-reliant and responsible through hunting and using the meat and skins for our family. And we lived in the city. Australian gun laws are not a model for the United States. I don't care how many politicians or left-wing liberals think it is. I lived it. It isn't. It isn't. American liberals who think we should copy Australia don't live there, so they don't know how those laws change the country and the culture of Australia. Yes! In exchange for people like us. Thank you. We're happy to be here. We love America. Now, Australian citizens can still buy guns. They must have what's considered to be a valid reason. And guess what, people? Self-defense isn't one of them. Can you believe that? In fact, it never was, even before the 1996 gun grab. Now, it didn't take all the guns. There's still plenty of guns in Australia. It just became highly regulated. So a policeman can turn up any time, day or night, and knock on your door and have the right to come in and check your safe and count the guns on his register, and he knows exactly what you have. And if they're not there, you go to jail. Yeah. Exactly. No privacy. And in fact, many years ago when I was still there, I had a friend of mine at the gun club that I belonged to, because you have to belong to a gun club. Once again, controlling. He was 70. He got bashed to within an inch of his life, being told to open his safe for the criminals that wanted his guns. How did they know he had them? How did he know they had them? Because of a thing called gun registration. And in fact, throughout the state of New South Wales, where I was living at the time, there was a cherry picking of homes being robbed and guns being stolen. And the New South Wales Police Firearms Registry denies that it was infiltrated. The evidence spoke for itself. He survived, my friend, but he did lose his guns. And he did lose a lot more that day. Just in the last 3 years in Australia, there has been at least one shooting incident every week. How's that gun confiscation working out for them? The number of known criminals caught with firearms has increased more than 5 times in the last 5 years. How's that for a statistic? And since 2000, there has been plenty of mass shootings in Australia, so don't believe the mass hysteria of the liberal left-wing media telling you otherwise. It's rubbish. I'm going to give you a very short list right now. It is statistics, but I want you to think about this. In 2002, there was what was called a Cabramatta wedding shooting. Yep, at a wedding, 7 were shot. In 2002, there was a university shooting, 7 shot and 2 killed. In 2003, there was a drive-by shooting in Greenacre in the suburb of Sydney. 2 killed after 100 rounds fired into a house. 2003, there was a gun battle on the streets of Sydney. I bet you didn't hear about that. In 2007, in the Melbourne CBD, there was a shooting, 3 shot, 1 killed. In 2010, in Roxburgh Park in Sydney, there was a shooting, 4 killed. In 2011, there was a Hectorville shooting in Sydney, 5 shot, 3 killed. 2014, Lockhart shooting, 5 killed. 2014, Wedderburn shooting, 3 killed. 2015, Bitterston shooting, 3 killed. 2015, Hermidale shooting, 3 killed. And 2016, Port Lincoln shooting, 5 killed. And 2016, 2 more times, Ingleburn shooting, 4 shot, 2 killed. Banksia Grove shooting, 3 shot, 2 killed. And then there was one in a shopping centre. 4 shot. 2017, there was a thing called the Brighton Siege, 5 shot, 2 killed. You can see clearly, everyone, that gun confiscation didn't help the citizens of Australia. It won't work here either. We need to protect our rights. I've got a few more things to say. I hope you'll be patient with me. This is important. Gun confiscation did not reduce gun violence, nor did it reduce violent crime. Violent crime is the measuring stick. Whenever you're talking to somebody about gun control, they forget it comes under the banner of violent crime. Methodologies change because you can't legislate a person's thoughts and minds. They will do what they want to do, regardless of how you try to control them. Just the honest people will be left without a means to level the playing field. As a woman, as an older person, as even one man ganged up on by several other men, we need to be able to level the playing field. It's our right to defend our lives. And when the law in Australia couldn't do it, what prohibition can never accomplish is eliminate demand for what is forbidden. Don't we all know that? Exactly. Legislation cannot control people. Now in Australia, demand, since the time of 1996, the demand for guns has an inescapable habit of generating sources of supply. People are ingenious, didn't you know? If that demand cannot be legally satisfied, it will be met through black market channels. And I want you to pay attention here for the next couple of minutes. It is estimated that only about 20% of all banned self-loading rifles were given up to authorities in Australia in the 1996 gun confiscation. People don't wish to be controlled, and that is what gun control is all about. Controlling people. You all know that. That's why we're here, right? Yeah. There is absolute evidence that there are plenty of guns smuggled into Australia. Despite what people say, oh, it's an island. They don't have any borders like Mexico. How could they possibly have guns smuggled into their country? Didn't you know people are ingenious? The politicians in Australia speak out about this constantly. And you can rest assured, my friends, that when politicians announce that they don't tolerate something, it's a fair bet that something is completely out of hand. So yes, guns are anything but controlled in Australia. Police admit they cannot eradicate a black market gun peddling in Australia, which includes automatic weapons and even rocket launchers. You heard me right. In fact, between 2005 and 2006, there was a massive 83% increase in firearms offences in the state of New South Wales alone. That's the state Sydney's in. And between 2014 and 2015, an even bigger jump in the state of Victoria. That's the state below. In fact, Australians are more at risk from gun crime than ever before, with the country's underground market for firearms ballooning just in the past decade. The 1996 confiscation after the Port Arthur massacre has spawned a huge criminal demand for weapons. There's always cause and effect. Once you enable organised crime, there are no boundaries. In fact, Australia's organised criminal outfits have learned the joy of DIY production. In 2012, an Australian man was arrested for manufacturing a gun, and many more for criminals. A year later, another man, who happened to be a jeweller, was busted for cranking up to 100 of the perfectly constructed MAC-10 machine guns for motorcycle gang members. If anything, Australians are quite ingenious. Australia's homicide rate as of 2014 is 1.8 to 2 per 100,000 people. By contrast, the United States has seen its murder rate drop from 9.3 per 100,000 in 1992 to 4.5 per 100,000 in 2014. During this time, the number of firearms in civilian hands increased by roughly 50% to an estimated 300,000. Sorry, 300 million, I should say. Let's get that right. If we remove gun-free cities from those statistics, like Chicago and Atlanta, etc., the rate drops to below Australia. Below. I feel safer here than I do in Australia every damn day. If Australia's gun policy did anything, it drove many of the country's peaceful gun owners underground. Everyday citizens being sent to prison for protecting their homes and their families, and an increase in criminal gun violence. That crime network has now developed international contacts and grown wealthy and dangerous. Australia may not have learned from our experience here in the United States and our culture, which we love and adore and know it's right, but we don't have to emulate that country's mistake. I know. God bless America, the land of the free and home of the brave!
Our next speaker has been involved in the pro-gun movement, protecting the Second Amendment for over 20 years. In 2000, Janely Tobias, along with myself and a number of other people, also had a gun rally here. And we've still been fighting the fight. We've got to sit there and save our guns. No matter what we do, never, never, never give up your guns. Because if we do, we will be followed as many other countries have gone into genocide from it. Now with that, I'm going to let you listen to Janely Tobias.
I have a presentation for Robert. I wasn't sure if he would wear a pink shirt, like how, so I have a white, will you wear this? Women Against Gun Control, Ladies of High Caliber. They're saying put it on, not take it off. So we keep our weapons concealed. Every time, like Robert drags me into these rallies, and I always tell him I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill you after. Oh no! I thank you so much for coming out, and it's a really busy day in Utah for political activists. There's a lot of elections, county conventions. And a lot of those people are pro-gun, so thank you so much for coming out. And this is a grassroots effort. So, I want to thank the police that's here and the people and the veterans and the people in uniform, the men and women who protect us. We're thankful for them, and we're going to have someone and a couple speakers talk more about military. And I just want to ask right now, how many here are being paid to be here? Raise your hand. Nobody? No paid protesters here today. That means we're here today because they don't dare raise their hands. So, I bet there's no paid protesters here, no people getting their hotels paid for, their meals paid for, being bussed in here today. So this is a really good showing. I'm proud to be here with you today. Greetings, supporters and students of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is a civil right. It is the right of all law-abiding citizens of the United States to keep and bear arms. That means the right to own guns. Little guns, cute guns, big guns, and ugly guns. Ugly guns. There are no ugly guns, but they're scary looking. I happen to prefer ugly guns because if a criminal breaks into my home, I don't want a cute gun. I don't want to mess in my house. If I pull out a big ugly gun, I think they're going to run really fast. Okay, so why do we have the right to own firearms? It's simple. Because we are the freest nation in the history of the world. And guns make us that way. And guns are going to keep us that way. So class is in session, and nobody's allowed to walk out of this classroom. First of all, isn't it about time that the world hears the other side of the story? That what law-abiding gun owners think about school shootings. We mourn with the victims of every school shooting. We are parents. We are grandparents. We are sons. We are daughters. We are aunts. We are uncles. We are cousins, friends, and neighbors. And some of us are even all those people in one body. We all know someone we love that attends a school campus every day. We worry about kids in school too. We want our loved ones to be safe. After the Florida school shooting, a man stopped me in a store to say, "We have to do something. Guns are just too easy to get." I told him, "Think about what you just said. Guns are not easier to get. They are harder to get than they were just a few years ago. Just a few decades ago, a young teenager could walk into the hardware store and buy a gun, no questions asked. For many of us here today, we remember going to school where the boys would drive trucks with gun racks in the back of their trucks holding rifles. Sometimes they would even take their rifles into the school to show their friends. No one ever used a gun to shoot up the school. Also, many of the high schools had gun ranges in the basement of the schools. I remember being bused to a shooting range to learn how to shoot a rifle in a class sponsored by the National Rifle Association. Can you imagine if that happened? So what has changed? Sorry about my voice. It's been a lot of late nights putting this together. I'm going to kill you, Bob. So what has changed? Have guns changed? Or have people changed? People! People that disagree with we the people that are here today at this rally believe that the magic bullet that will stop school shootings is to pass more gun laws. We here today know that passing more gun control laws will only stop the good guys from getting guns. And I'm sorry I always say good guys and bad guys. There's just no bad girls. Sorry. If that's a sexist thing to say, don't sue me, please. Okay. There are thousands of gun laws. Thousands. Have they stopped the bad guys from getting guns? No. What? I didn't hear that. Say no. No. Okay. To help us all understand this concept, it's confession time. I'm going to ask you to confess your sins publicly today here in front of all the people. How many of us here, when your moms told you to stay out of the cookie jar, did you stay out? No! Raise your hand if you've ever stolen a cookie out of the cookie jar. When your parents told you to be on time for dinner, to not stay out later than midnight, raise your hand if you disobeyed any of these laws. I'm so glad that we all disobeyed a few of these laws here and there. Let's start from the very beginning of mankind, when God told Eve in the Garden of Eden not to eat the apple. Did she eat the apple? What?
She did.
God gave us 10 commandments. Only 10. Do people break the 10 commandments? Yes. When people want something, they ignore the laws to get what they want. Another case in point. When evil monsters want to kill innocent people for whatever reason, they obviously disobey, "Thou shalt not kill." Help me say that. Thou shalt not kill. And murder. And by the way, Victor Shanti wanted me to give a shout out to the Black Republicans against gun control. We all know a few more of them. Okay. Former Vice President Joe Biden.
Pedophile.
Sponsored the Gun-Free Zones Act in 1990. Boo! According to Crime Prevention Research Center, gun-free zones, areas where guns are prohibited, have been the target of more than 98% of all mass shootings. These areas are killing fields. This staggering number is why such designated areas are often referred to as soft targets, meaning unprotected and vulnerable. Dozens of people have been killed in gun-free zones, or more, hundreds, thousands. 1% of mass shootings since 1950 have occurred in places that were not gun-free zones. Only 2 mass shootings in the United States since 1950 have occurred in an area where citizens were allowed to carry guns. Guns save lives. Say that with me 3 times. Guns save lives.
Guns save lives.
Shame on politicians for passing ridiculous gun laws that make school children sitting ducks for crazy people intent on killing children. Tell them, shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. That's right. The first 10 amendments of the United States Constitution are referred to as the Bill of Rights. These are civil rights. Civil rights are the rights that each person has in a society, whatever their race, sex, or religion. The Second Amendment is a civil right. Let's send a message. When I say Second Amendment, you say civil right. Second Amendment.
Civil rights!
Second Amendment.
Civil rights!
Second Amendment.
Civil rights!
One more time to let all the gun haters that don't understand this and the people that want to make children victims and everybody else in their family. Second Amendment.
Civil rights! God given
Yes,
rights!
absolutely.
Natural
Yeah.
rights.
All of those things. No one, not children, not politicians, not business leaders, not religious leaders, not even the President of the United States. No one gets to use a crisis or a tragedy to take away any of our civil rights. We do not agree with former White House Chief of Staff and current Mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. He needs to be in jail! I agree, they all do. A whole bunch of them do. He was quoted in an interview with the Wall Street Journal as saying, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. This crisis provides the opportunity for us to do things that you could not before." It's already started. States are passing laws limiting magazine capacity, raising the legal age to own guns, and more burdensome gun laws that criminals will not obey. The voices of powerful people, including United States Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens, are calling for a repeal of the Second Amendment. Oh, we just want common sense gun laws. Common sense gun laws lead to the repeal of the Second Amendment. He has decried the right to bear arms as outdated. Is he right or wrong?
Wrong!
Some of the people that are demanding to take away our civil rights of owning guns are the same people that are burning down campuses to keep one person from speaking and every digital means to freeze citizens off the internet. These hostile forces cannot be trusted to guard any of our civil rights. We're not talking about the students. We're talking about the people who secretly fund the hatred and exploit these poor high school students. The super wealthy, like George Soros, who despise the United States. People like George Soros, who despise the United States of America and want to replace it with an impossible, horrible, utopian nightmare. The students are being exploited by people who care more about harming their political adversaries than helping the everyday person. The students are being exploited by people who have no intention of having a thriving, prosperous United States with freedom and justice for all. They are for disarming and diminishing America to the same horrible level of misery and poverty for all. Not from this crowd. They use tragedies and heartbreak as the bloody shirt to manipulate people to their intolerant ways. The truth is that the wealthy who fund this movement are the very privileged who live in gated communities and have armed security. There have been many people offering suggestions on how to keep schools safe. Here's a few solutions. How about start with loving thy neighbor and even loving thy enemy? In a freakish coincidence, the school shooting in Florida happened on Valentine's Day, the day we celebrate love. Maybe the message really is as simple as showing more love. Another solution, stop advertising to criminals that schools are a gun-free zone. Wouldn't it make more sense, instead of posting a no guns allowed sign, that the schools advertise and post signs warning that any would-be attacker, that this school is being protected by a small army?
Damn straight!
Allow parents and others who are willing to volunteer to spend their time at the school observing the parking lots, walking the halls, and helping to be more eyes watching the school. Allow gun safety education to be taught in the schools. Even if you don't have guns in your home, everyone needs to learn how to safely handle firearms. Even though the good news is, for the responsible gun owners that I'm proud to be a part of, is that gun accidents rank among the lowest of any accidents among children. But one, it's too many, but they won't let us educate them in the schools. For years, many of us have fought to have gun safety, at least for grade school children. To teach them, when you see a gun, stop, don't touch it, run away, and tell an adult. I brought as many gun safety coloring books from home that I had today to share with you, and I'd like to introduce the lovely ladies from the Well-Armed Women. They're over there. There was a, my sisters in arms. The Salt Lake Tribune did a huge cover story on them, and I'm proud to know them. And they came out to say that they have guns for protection. A lot of women and men, we get threatened. I'll admit, when I started flapping my mouth, I get quite a few threats. And when I was a little kid, when my brother and I stayed, and my brother and I were home alone, we'd have brooms and stuff in case anybody broke in. But I graduated to higher weaponry to stop any intruders or people that would do me harm. So the ladies of the Well-Armed Women, they're going to pass them out, as well as, and they're the Eddie Eagle Gun Safety Program that the National Rifle Association has. These are so affordable. So many of us, I can tell you story after story. I tried to get this in the schools and they fight me on it. So, that's a bunch of crap, I believe. So they said we can't have gun safety education in the schools because you won't let us teach sex education. So I said, okay, why don't you combine the rules? Because these are the rules I grew up with. They're the same. When you see a gun, stop, don't touch it, leave the area, and tell an adult. Keep your feet, always assume all guns are loaded and keep your gun pointed in a safe direction, okay? Thank you for being such an incredible class of students. This is phenomenal. So I want you to feel the power today here, because this is how we're just getting started. We just found out about a national rally and Bob Gratt wrote me into it and some other people, and we have a lot of people out here, and I'm really proud and thankful for you for coming out. So I'm gonna, this is a class where we're gonna have a pop quiz. True or false? AR-15s are assault weapons.
False.
And no matter how many times we tell the media and everybody else, they still call them assault weapons. AR-15s are not assault weapons. Stop calling guns by their wrong name. Posting no guns allowed signs stops bad guys with guns from entering schools or other places of business. True or false?
False.
You know, I get to add now that no guns allowed didn't stop the bad girl from breaking into YouTube and shooting up the place, but she didn't get a lot of attention because she's a vegan and she's a girl. She got buried on in the news. Yeah, she was using the handgun. Doesn't fit the narrative. Passing more gun control laws will stop the bad guys from getting guns.
False.
No member of the National Rifle Association has ever committed a mass shooting.
True.
PETA has.
We should stop bullying people and be nice to people.
True.
The first machine gun was created in 1718. Therefore, it's a trick question. Okay. The first machine gun was created in 1718. Therefore, the founding fathers knew that machine guns should be included in the Second Amendment.
True.
Jewelry, art, banks, courthouses, airports, celebrities, politicians, rich people, athletes, and musicians are all protected with more security and more guns than our most precious asset, our children who attend public schools. This is wrong. So, all of you have smartphones, I'm sure, or you have a way to reach out to the people that aren't here today. And I always say, a mom with a mouth is more powerful than a mom with a magnum. I also say a man with a mouth is more powerful than a man with a magnum. So get out and use your mouth and get on social media and spread the word. And we're just getting started. We need to come together and with peaceful settings and places like this and back up our arguments with facts. And thanks again. I'm honored to have. All of a sudden, I got emotional. That was weird. That was a real tear. So I just want to thank all the wonderful people that I've met fighting for gun rights. You're the best people in the world. Thank you.
General is a little forgetful sometimes. We have a lady who'd like to talk. Generally is going to announce it.
Okay, Angie, to say that guns save. Oh, here's another true and false. Guns save lives at about 100 to 1 for every one person that is killed by a bad person using a gun. About 100 lives are saved. True or false?
True.
Let's say guns save lives.
Guns save lives.
Guns save lives.
Guns save lives.
Okay. To illustrate that, here's Angie. You still want me to stand up here with you, or do you want to allow to sit down? And she's going to tell you how her gun saved her life and her family.
So I'm home with my family. I have 2 children. Their father is training with the military before he deploys. And we are sleeping in, and my house alarm goes off. I check the alarm. It shows that someone has broken into the man door on our garage. I go back, I grab my gun, and I'm thinking, should I load the chamber or not? And then I remember a statistic. Criminals who break into your home when you are home are there to do ill intent bodily harm. And so I go ahead and I cock my handgun and I go to the door between the house and the garage, and I point it at the door and I holler, "I have a gun pointed at your head. If you leave now, I will not shoot you." The good part of the story is he believed me, and he ran out the back door, he ran across my yard and jumped the fence. And as I'm watching him leave, I'm calling the police. It took them 22 minutes to get to my home. He was never caught. So, without that gun, I do believe my family may or may not be alive, or we would at least be have had some harm done to us, and that gun saved my life. I have one last message. For those of you who think you have the right to tell us what we can and can't have and what we can and can't do, that we shouldn't be able to defend our children at home and at school, that we shouldn't be able to go to the woods and provide meat for our families, that we shouldn't have fundamental rights to defend our families, homes, way of life, and our own beliefs, to you I say, your arrogant, elitist, controlling efforts have no place in this country.
Thank you very much for your information as far as what happened to you. It's always good to hear where a gun saves somebody, because they always sit there and try to say that guns are evil. Guns are not evil, they're a tool. In the hands of a bad person, they're evil. In the hands of a good person, they're good. Now, the next speaker we have is a young man by the name of Colin. He is a 16-year-old high school student. He contacted me a few days, about a week or so ago, and since then he's been on the radio twice now, and he is basically what I have hoped for the future, because most of our children these days are indoctrinated with the liberal attitude that guns are evil, and they are not. They are a tool. But that I'll let Colin speak to. And he's his high schoolers, his Facebook page is High Schoolers for Guns.
Well-regulated militia a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is the Second Amendment. My name is Colin Thorpe, and I attend Hunter High. I've been interviewed by KUER News and by KNRS News. As of Monday, I am now 16. As of Monday, I am pre-registered to vote as of 2020. While I was filling out the form, it asked my party. I proudly checked the Republican box. I was asked if I would come and talk about school life as a conservative teen. Let me tell you, it's quite rough, but it's also because what they think of me doesn't get to my head. But my facts sure get to them. On March 14th of this year, there was the National School Walkout. On that day in my class, there were only 3 kids on time and present. I am pleased to announce that I was one of those kids. I am pretty sure I had a bigger impact than the kids who walked out. A little bit about everything leading up to this and my political background. As a kid in elementary and leaning into the beginning of years of junior high, I would say I was in the middle of the spectrum. My parents didn't have to have much influence on my political views. We had guns, so I was okay with the guns. Because we had them, but in junior high, I took a class called American History. We took a political test, and at the end, I was right in the middle of the Democrat and Republican parties. After a while, I realized that all my opinions were off feelings. I also realized how crazy it was getting, and I did my own research into it, and I give thanks to Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro for that. And I decided to follow the truth, not off of what I felt was right. As of right now, you could ask any of my friends, and they would tell you that I'm very American and very conservative. And I'm very proud of that. So as the weeks leading up to the walkout, I started my opinions and showing my facts and opinions multiple times. I got a lot of hate for that. I was open to an open-minded discussion, but everyone who said they were open to it, I either offended them by my facts and truth, or they cursed me out.
Sounds like you won.
What I enjoy the most is that when they start doing this, I know that I've won because they don't have any other response. All they can do is try to insult me. What I find ironic is the walkout was to end violence in schools, but they just were invoking violence to make sure everyone thought like they did. I was starting to get sick of sitting quiet and worrying about what people thought of me because of my political views. That's when I decided to open my mouth. With that, I got a lot of retaliation, but since I didn't back down, others started opening up, not being afraid of what they believe. They all had someone who would sit back and have a conversation and not worry about offending someone or being shut down. What I enjoy so much about this is they came to me when someone on their social media who are saying things that are not true and asking me to respond for them. Afterwards, the lies seem to stop and the cursing starts to come. While we're talking about lies and being shut down, it's not only other classmates. The people who we are told we have to trust and respect are the ones shutting us down in public, in front of our peers. They don't swear at us like the other students do. Not saying that they don't swear at us. In fact, I have an experience in being shut down in public eye by a teacher I thought I could trust. She made us watch the March Before Our Lives rally video and the 60 Minutes with the kids who started the March Before Our Lives. We did not have a choice to sit it out or to not watch it. I, for one, was not interested in listening to their lies. Afterwards, she told the class that the floor was open to discussion. I was debating in my head if I should open my mouth. After the first kid talked about how he agreed with the kids for about 5 minutes, she opened up the floor again. No one raised their hands, so I decided I could talk. And I decided I could trust this teacher and thought she would let me speak my opinion. I talked about how we were all on the same playing field of wanting to end school violence and school shootings, but how I believe that we should take care of it a different way. I talked about how I participated in the March Before Our Lives. After I talked about that, I said that the road splits when guns enter the picture and they start lying. After I said that, she asked for one lie. I started talking about AR-15s and how they're not assault rifles and how they are not military-grade weapons and have never seen battle.
That's right.
Right after that, she felt the need to stop me in mid-thought. She told me that AR-15s were used in war and how her husband used them in war. After she said that, I started disagreeing with her and bringing up facts, and all she did was repeat my name, interrupting me, so I sat down with the most disrespect for her ever. Respect is given, not earned. You earn disrespect. That day, she earned my disrespect for highly disrespecting me in front of everyone. After this, I probably stood up for not even a minute, and she moved on to the next person.
Make her famous!
Her name's Miss Jones. I'm not saying all my peers and teachers are like this. In fact, my favorite teacher has the same views as us and is open to it. It was not. I will not be saying who it is because I would like to keep him in our school.
Want me to carry it? Yeah, for a minute.
And I also have the highest respect for this person. Not only because they have the same views as us, but because they have helped me become a better person and how to be a strong and independent person. I sure wish I had more teachers like this person, not these other teachers who say rely on the school system and the government. Why would I rely on something corrupt? These kids and teachers talk about how they are afraid of going to school as if every single school has been or is going to be shut up. You know what? Real quick question, how many of you are carrying right now?
Yep!
Look around you. If you saw this person at a Walmart behind you in line, would you ever suspect this person was carrying? Okay, let's say a man runs in with a gun and holds up everyone and all of a sudden the person behind you pulls his gun out and stops the attacker. You would be so thankful that they were carrying. What if you could be the person that saves everyone in that store? What if there was an AR-15 laying right next to you? Would you use it? Would you, at that moment in time, say, nope, gotta ban all these assault weapons and can't have them here? I want to finish off with what I kind of said at the March Before Our Lives. Here's my solution, since that's what we're here for, to find a solution. We should be the weeder, not a cutter. The weed represents anyone who wants to hurt themselves or others. The cutter represents taking away guns. The weeder represents us together to solve the problem for its roots. When you cut the top of a weed, the weed grows back. This represents them finding another way to do damage. You have to pull the root out to kill and get rid of the weed. This represents finding or ending or finding a solution before these people want to do harm to people or themselves. My solution is to take care of the problem before it becomes a problem. Let's make it so these individuals don't even get to that point in their head where they want to shoot up the school, hurt others, or even kill themselves. No one wants these things. The left solution is ban guns. Sure, they'll say that that's not what they want, but multiple people think we should just get rid of the Second Amendment, such as former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens said. If you cut the top off of a weed, it will grow back. This goal of damage, look at the UK, they are now trying to ban knives. What's next? Batteries, because people are being attacked by battery acid? Let's pull the root out. Let's end it before it grows. Thank you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Colin, for that speech. We really appreciate it, and I think you're going to be one of the future leaders of this movement.
God bless you, Colin!
Now, without further ado, Stephen Lund with Ace Firearms would like to have a speak first for a few minutes.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name's Stephen Lund. Me and my wife own Ace Firearms in West Jordan, a small gun shop run out of our home, dedicated to our rights and firearms education. The media today is one of the most divisive drivers of the gun control movement, placing the blame on society instead of the wrongdoers. In the wake of the Parkland, Florida shooting, the media exonerated the shooter, labeling him as a broken individual, and immediately placing the blame on the NRA and gun owners. We cannot go on as a society blaming society. It is time we hold criminals responsible for their actions. We should streamline the death penalty. If you killed someone in cold blood and you are convicted, you should be dealt with in a swift manner. Gun laws appear to be written by people who know nothing about firearms. Uneducated rulemaking is like a merry-go-round. There's a lot of movement, but it doesn't go anywhere. With that being said, anybody here who knows anything about NFA, they know that's a mess. Speaking of which, why does it take 6 to 24 months to purchase a suppressor? I'm pretty sure that the same goal can be accomplished by a 4473 and an email in less than 15 minutes. I think in history, the only people that have really committed a crime with a suppressor are people in cartels and federal government. The word gun control, or the words gun control, are two words that are loosely translated. To some, gun control can be defined as, I know nothing about what I'm talking about, but I feel passionate about it. Here's a prime example of the gun control way. Alan Feist, the gym teacher at Parkland, Florida shooting, died trying to shield kids from bullets. Had he been armed, he could have had a chance to save himself and the kids by stopping the shooter. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Si vis pacem parabellum. If you seek peace, prepare for war. We need solutions. For example, if you want to prevent or lessen casualties in school shootings, here's a solution that I propose. Train volunteer teachers in defensive tactics. Arm those volunteer teachers with a concealed firearm they would carry on their person, not in a bag or in a desk drawer. In addition to a sidearm, have a real gun, such as an AR-15 or a shotgun, in their classroom, in a safe that only the teacher and administrators know the combination to. Have an alarm on that safe that upon opening would notify other teachers, administrators, and the police. In the 1950s, it was common to have gun clubs in schools. Why are we not teaching firearm safety in schools today? Why is hunter education not part of the scholastic curriculum? That or the Eddie Eagle program? There's evidence that supports that children with firearms experience taught by a role model are less likely than otherwise to come to harm with in firearms accidents. A child is likely to come in contact with a firearm at some time in their life. When that time comes, how will your children react? We send our kids to school to give them the tools and experience needed to make sound decisions when those situations arise. This is why they tell us we need sex education. Why shouldn't that apply to firearms as well? Why preach knowledge in sex yet ignorance in firearms? Knowledge doesn't apply to one more than the other. People talk about banning the AR-15. Why would you even the playing field on a criminal's behalf? As my God-given right to self-defense, I want a bigger, badder gun than my enemy. And that's not even the purpose of the Second Amendment. If you ask me, Dianne Feinstein, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and other power-hungry politicians, including some here in Utah, are prime examples of why the Second Amendment was written. If you are so inclined to ban my firearms, I have one thing to say. Come and take them. Many actors and actresses are on the forefront of gun control, but they contradict themselves by playing heroes saving the day using guns. They say we shouldn't even have guns, yet they're surrounded by an entourage of armed guards. Do you have control over your life? Are you willing to let movie stars, politicians, and teenagers with little experience in life tell you how to run your life? These people are disconnected from reality, and yet we treat them as if they have the answers to all their problems. Maybe because they have direct access to the media, their voices get heard. If these people are willing to march their rights away, then they ought to march their commie asses back to a place where that has already been done. If that is the utopia that fits their agenda, let them go.
I'll buy one too. Me too.
In the spirit of our framers, our forefathers, we must hold our ground. We must show that we will not budge. We will not be pushed around. We are Utah. We will not comply. No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms. Thomas Jefferson. The very atmosphere of firearms anywhere and everywhere restrains evil interference. They deserve a place of honor with all that is good. George Washington. But a constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored.
Hi, how you doing?
Liberty once lost is lost forever. John Adams.
Call your lawmakers and tell them
They
that you
give
want them to
essential
bring up common
liberty
sense
to
carry,
obtain a little
constitutional
temporary
carry,
safety,
and you want to
deserve
pass to
neither
the
liberty
special
nor
session.
safety.
They've
Benjamin
got to get
Franklin.
together to spend $600 million in surplus money that they have.
The cost
And so,
of liberty is
my
eternal
suggestion
justice.
is this:
It's
tell them
vigilance.
that if they can't
Thomas
bring that up
Jefferson.
and pass it, put it on the governor's desk to sign, then you're not going to
It
give them
doesn't
your
take a
vote in
majority to
November.
prevail, but rather an
Got a little bit
irate,
of,
tireless minority
hardball
keen
we
on
can play
setting
here,
brush
and I think
fires
it's
of
time we
freedom
do.
in the minds of men. Samuel Adams.
All right, thank you.
I'm not brilliant enough to come up with these quotes myself, but I have a general understanding of what it means to be free. Taking my rights away with the intention of protecting children doesn't protect anyone. It gives you one choice: servitude.
No, my lower back's and standing with
Our
it.
forefathers knew that the only thing that would keep America
there.
free is a rebellious spirit. These quotes are proof that the people who started our country understood that we cannot protect ourselves or preserve peace without the presence of firearms. Gun-free zones are soft targets, not safe places. I'm warning everyone. The Second Amendment is our last and only defense against tyranny. If we lose it, God help us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen, for those words. Hey, Cap. Cap here is the individual that has brought his cannons here today. He's going to talk a little bit about them. Now, folks, you understand that what you're seeing here are weapons of mass destruction that we used to be able to buy back then in the day. And they said we're not supposed to have fully automatic weapons because they're weapons of mass destruction. Well, you know, as an individual back then, you could buy a cannon. Some of our founding fathers sat there and had some. They tried to take them along with the rifles back in 1775. That's basically, the anniversary of that date is 5 days from now. It'll be 242 years since we sat there and fought against the British. One of the things we have to realize is we don't celebrate that day. We don't even have it in calendars. But that should be a day that we all remember. The first shot that was heard around the world, the day we sat there and started our freedom. With that, thank you, Steve.
I've been standing there over an hour. There. All right. Sorry you've been standing there over an hour, so I'll make this quick. He's asked me to give you a little bit of history on these weapons that I brought. However, before I do that, I want to give you just a little bit of information. Over the last several years, and especially the last couple of months, I've been hearing a lot of discussions about the Second Amendment, both pro and con. They don't have any problem with, in order to maintain a secure country, or with the right to bear arms. They all understand that. The problem is usually the well-regulated militia. Invariably, everybody that I have heard has got that wrong because they don't know the history. So I wanted to spend just a second and give you what that's about, and then we'll go ahead with the guns. 1620 was about when the first colony was done. The Pilgrims, the Mayflower, and that. And for the next about 200 years, most of the population in the English colonies, or those that made up the English colonies, were in small towns and villages scattered around the country. Every one of those, or certainly most of them, those that had any size, had what they called a committee of safety. That was made up of every able-bodied young man from age 16 to 65. Once a month, they got together to train to take care of any problems that might come down the pipe, from Indians to neighbors. They had fights with French, they had fights with the British, they had fights with each other. Every young man or old man, every able-bodied man, as I said, from 16 to 65, was in the Committee of Safety, or it was often called the militia. Once a month, they were required to train. This was not voluntary. If you missed your training day, they'd come find you, and if you didn't have an adequate excuse, you got fined. It was not something well, I'll be there if I want. One other important fact, when you attended your drill, you were responsible for bringing your own firearm. And that's why the necessary to keep and bear arms. If the Second Amendment were written today, and back then they wrote it very plainly for them, but since we don't know what a well-regulated militia is, let's put it in today's terms. A well-trained and adequately armed population is necessary for the free state, and the right of all citizens to keep and bear arms will not be infringed. Now, please just remember that well-regulated militia is every single male member of that community, and he has a gun. So now, about these guns which I brought. In 1773, a captain in the Royal Artillery brought a small cannon to show to King George, fired it, and essentially impressed him. It was impressive because they had just finished, about 6 years earlier, a war with France, all over North America. It was called the French and Indian War. They found that the big guns that they were playing with at that time were actually too big to be effective. They couldn't get them across the trails through the mountains. So the gun that was shown to King George by Colonel Pattison was small enough that it could be carried by its crew. I have an example of that gun here. They actually had two different patterns, but about a dozen and a half of these guns were mounted on the same carriage and brought to North America late 1775. They're interesting in that they had shafts attached to the front and the rear so that the ones in the rear could be turned over so they'd be parallel. But anyway, then the guys could, if they needed to, could pick them up and carry them over something. They also had the tugs, or the ropes with the chains on them, chains at the first, so if it rubbed on a wheel, it wouldn't cut it and have a problem. These were used then. Shoots a 3-pound ball, about 1.5 miles, but the effective range was 1,000 yards. If you look down the hill behind us, you're looking at about Temple Street, or well, I guess the North Temple. However, when the opposing armies were too far away, they didn't waste their ammunition. They waited till they got close enough to see and to be effective. Then these guns were used not to hurt anybody so much, but to disrupt the opposing line, because they lined up. You've seen the Napoleonic tactics or the war, the Revolutionary War, where they all lined up in a pretty line and then they started walking towards you. These guns were supposed to punch holes in that, because if your rank wasn't pretty, you couldn't fight. The following year, a man named Congreve, who had worked with the other guns earlier in the French and Indian War, made an upgrade. He made it cleaner, less stuff on the gun, and he also added the boxes on either side of the gun. So with the boxes on each side and one in the rear, the one in the rear holds the powder. And if you're going to be using it, you take the powder out, get it out of the way so it won't have a problem, it won't blow up on you. But on either side, as you'll see on those boxes, the rounds, the ball or the canisters are in there and they'd stay with the gun. With the earlier gun, all the fixed ammunition was in the back box and there wasn't that much of it. So 1776, those guns came to this country and they were used in a number of areas, and that was the gun that if you go to places back east, we took a lot of those away from the British soldiers at Saratoga and at Yorktown. So those are the guns. This one over here is the one that is mostly seen. The gun over here, we have two originals of that. One is at the Smithsonian, the other is mounted in a wall at West Point. But you can see with the look of the shafts, if I didn't say, I think I did, but that was called a grasshopper. Looking at it, you can see why. With that as the name, when they put the side boxes on this gun over here, it became the butterfly. There is no other display of a grasshopper and a butterfly in this country. This is unique for here. So take a look.
Do you want to go sit down over there?
In 1780, 1781, the Spanish, who helped a great deal on our side of the revolution, especially in the south around New Orleans, King Carlos III of Spain actually taxed California to the tune of several $1 million to help the American Revolution. That particular gun is a Spanish mountain gun, and it was used just like the others, only it's on a carriage that is more effective for a fortification or a ship. It's a 4-pound gun, and it was used similar during the same time period. John Sutter, however, picked up a couple of those in about 1840 when he had his fort, and it was at the end of their training and on their way home that the Mormon Battalion bought 2 guns from Sutter. One was a gun like this, and they brought it here to Utah in 1850. So this is a copy of the original, which is now in the Mormon Battalion Visitor Center in San Diego. I identified it about 2000, and we have one here, which is like it would have been here in Utah. So that is not only a Revolutionary War history, that's our history. Now I have two other weapons here. One on this side standing is a Brown Bess. That's the assault weapon of the British Army from about 1725 to close to 1800. This Brown Bess is the type that was used by both sides, both Americans and British, during the Revolutionary War. By the Americans because we got a bunch in the French and Indian War, and also then we took some away from the British during the war. On the other side is what was called essentially a Pennsylvania rifle. It is a rifle as opposed to the flintlock smoothbore over here. Both of them use a flint to fire. This one is, the gun on this side is rifled. It takes twice as long to load, which is why they didn't use it so much. However, its range was double the Brown Bess, or the musket. So there were groups of soldiers that were using rifles and groups of soldiers that were using muskets. The riflemen would usually start before the muskets got into range, and when the muskets got in range, the riflemen left. And then the muskets took over. The primary advantage also of the musket, the British musket, is you see that pointy end. That, for all intents and purposes, is a one-shot spear. And part of the strength of the British Army was their use of the musket and the bayonet. So that was essentially what they used in that time period. And I will be here if anybody has any questions. I have cards. We'd like to be able to organize a cannoneering group, either Mormon Battalion or Rev War. If any of you are interested, be sure to let me know, and we'll see what we can come up with. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed the program so far. We still got a little bit to go. We're going to let Mike Jury come in next. You want to talk for a few minutes?
Thank you, Bob. I'd like to give a shout out and see if we can all give a round of applause for two groups of people that are represented here today. The men and women that are in our law enforcement community that put on that badge and strap up every day to keep us safe. I'd also like for you to consider, as we stand here today, that myself as a combat veteran of the United States Marine Corps, that we're reminded of our brothers and sisters that are out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, that are stationed on submarines, fighting from aircraft in Syria, Yemen, the Horn of Africa, that are out there defending us. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. As Bob has said, and those who know me, I'm a man of few words, but just some quick remarks. As I indicated, I'm a combat veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I served for 11 years, 10 years active duty, and then another year in the reserves. One thing I'd like to talk about real quickly today is the Second Amendment and the Constitution. Who has actually taken the time to read the entire Constitution? So in that document, there are 7,591 words to include the Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution. And I think that the 27 most important words in that entire document are the Second Amendment. Friends, the Second Amendment is under constant attack, whether you believe it or not, and it's what some would consider a slow boil. I consider it a fast boil. We are sitting in a boiling pot of water right now where every day our freedoms are under attack. It's not going to stop with the Second Amendment. Once they take the Second Amendment, but we're never going to let them do that, then they're going to go after the First Amendment, We're going to lose our freedom of speech. They're going to go after your right to practice the religion that you choose to. They're going to monitor what television stations we can watch, what books we can read. It basically turns into a George Orwellian type of government, and I don't think anybody here wants that. So what I would ask you to do today when you leave this rally is consider a couple things. Reach out to the other side. Those that are not gun friendly or don't know anything about guns, invite them to come out and shoot with you. Ask them to go over to our friends at Ace Firearms, or the Utah Gun Exchange. Shoot on the range. Check out a gun. Shoot with somebody so you can actually speak intelligently to the subject. So as you leave here today, I would ask you to reach out to the other side and make those connections. Thank you.
Well, I got a couple more things to say before I turn it over to a few other people. One of the things is never, as I would say again, never give up your firearms. This nation is free because of guns. If it was not for firearms, we wouldn't be here. Because we had firearms, we were able to sit there and go against the British. And right now, we're, like he said, we're in real trouble, folks. In real trouble. I don't know if you're familiar with what's happened over this last week, where Vermont passed some more gun laws. They've basically taken away any magazines and over 10 round magazines for rifles and over 15 for pistols. This is a slow attack. Right now it seems to be speeded up, and every time they have a school shooting, they end up having this, they keep attacking us. One of the things that we should do when we leave here is, as best as possible, work to end gun-free zones. All gun-free zones are killing zones. And we need to sit there and get past this. If we get rid of the gun-free zones, we're probably going to end up getting rid of our school shootings. You look at the places that don't have gun-free zones, they don't have shootings. Look at Utah. You can actually carry in our schools here. Now, where did we have our whole, the only shooting we had here was at Trolley Square. And guess what they had at the time at Trolley Square? It was a gun-free zone. Cowards will sit there and end up, going out to gun-free zones because they know nobody's going to be carrying there. I want to tell a story. How many people know what happened 4 years ago in Connecticut and New York? Well, what happened after that with laws? They passed a law in Connecticut. And they basically said, you basically have to register your firearms. Well, 800,000 people in Connecticut refused to register their firearms. A million in New York. Well, what happens next is the Connecticut legislature gets up there and they start talking amongst themselves. And this you can find actually on the internet. This is how I found it, because I wondered what happened after that, so I did some research on it. Turns out that they were in a little meeting, and this intern says, well, who's going to collect all these firearms? And then they said, well, we're going to have law enforcement do it. He says, my dad is the police chief in my hometown. And they said, no. Well, his name's on this list. There's 5 more people that I recognize that are on this list of people we know that have not registered their firearms that I know are law enforcement. So I did a little research. 68% of law enforcement in the state of Connecticut refuse to register their firearms. 68%. So I'm not sure which one of these legislatures basically said, well, we'll arrest them all and, fire them all. And then one said, well, we can't do that. He said, why is that? Well, if we fire 68% of our law enforcement, we're going to have anarchy because we're not going to have enough police to take care of anything. And we don't have enough time to sit there and get more trained. And we don't have money to sit there and train more. And they're like, oh. So what happened after that is they sort of stopped, and everybody just they sort of stopped it. Well, we have to get these people to understand that they don't have the money and resources to take the firearms away from us. There are estimated 350 million guns in this country. There's estimated over 100 million gun owners in this country, and there's estimated to be trillions of rounds of ammunition in this country. You look at that, and we're also looking at trillions of dollars in property. The thing they don't want to sit there and talk about, oh, we're just going to confiscate your guns. Well, folks, that violates the Fourth Amendment too. That's theft. An average AR-15 is probably still around $800 to $900. I know some of them are a little bit cheaper now. But I'd say most people who bought one probably spend $1,000, and that's not counting scopes, magazines, ammo, or anything else. This is all theft. There's an estimated $4 trillion worth of firearms, ammunition, magazines, and other paraphernalia used along that these people would want to confiscate from us. That is theft. Also, right now is the worst possible time for these idiots to be doing what they're trying to do. Remember that the militia, when it was really designed, was not only defense against our so-called leaders, against tyranny, but it was also a line of defense against foreign invasion. Now we have talk right now, oh, well, we're sitting there looking and messing around with Russia. Well, nobody will ever sit there and come to try to invade us unless we are disarmed. That's why you have people like China saying, well, you guys need to disarm. Well, folks, an admiral in World War II by the name of Yamamoto, he made a famous speech in his group, and he said, we can't really attack the Americans because there's a cowboy behind every blade of grass with a rifle. So as long as we stay armed and we stay united, they can't really take the firearms. It's an impossible task because, for one thing, majority of law enforcement, majority of military aren't going to do it. You know, I've had several military people have called me over the last couple of weeks. We're sort of nervous about coming out here because, you know, there are people they see around militia. They get a little. The government gets a little nervous with active military hanging out with militia people. But they all said they support us, and they ain't taking their guns. No, I don't know if you've heard. One of the things I've heard from the left is saying, well, if they don't give up the guns, we'll bring in the military. Well, folks, I was in the military for 13 years. I'm an old man. It was 1970 to 1983. I came in and joined the military. I was a Democrat. I didn't know any better. I was 18 years old. My parents were Democrats. We were in the middle of, in Wisconsin, sitting there, and my dad was a brewery worker. He was in the union. So everybody in the union was a Democrat. I joined the military. I learned, hey, guess what? Democrats don't like the military. They really don't like it, because every time you turn around, they're taking away a benefit. And then the Republicans come in, and they give it back to us. So it was not too hard to sit there and say, I'm no longer a Democrat because they don't like me. So I became a Republican. And today I would call myself a constitutionalist. I believe in the Constitution. We took an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. There was never a time limit on that oath. And we as ex-military personnel need to stand up. If something happens, we have to stand up and defend our country, whether it be from foreign invasion or whether it be from a dictator or tyranny. They cannot take our firearms. Remember, they all took an oath too. Their oath said to defend and uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The only thing they have to do is follow the Constitution. When they vote against the Constitution, they basically have committed an act of treason to the people of this country, because the Constitution was not telling us what to do, it was telling them what to do. And if they sit there and keep doing this, we need to remind them. We need to put their feet to the fire. And remember, when they come and say, oh, you're going to vote for me, remember, you voted against me. You tried to take my rights away. Every time they vote for a gun bill, 22,000 gun bills in this country. 22,000. Every one of them violates the Constitution and the Second Amendment. And if we keep footing up with it, I say this, we don't want any more anti-gun laws. We want to go back. We've taken it and taken it. We've sat there and said, oh, we're going to compromise. We compromise and compromise and compromise. They haven't compromised. They keep taking more and more and more. And all of a sudden now, some of them are going out, yeah, we ain't going to stop until we take it all. We want all the guns. We want to get rid of it. Realize that anybody who's against our guns, us holding or taking our guns, they are not our friends, and they're not our allies, and they're not, definitely not Americans. We have to be strong in this, and we have to be united. There's a lot of people here today who didn't show up for all kinds of reasons. One of the ones I accept is that they're going into the Republican convention right now, and they're having a vote on the people being elected. People that we're going to have to elect. You know, we don't have the power really to sit there and go after individuals, because we have to sit there and wait whatever they come up and say, well, you got these two people to vote for. But we have to sit there and push these people. We have to make sure that these guys up here, there's talk of a special election, special session this summer. There's talk that they want to sit there, well, we've got to sit there and give up some of our gun rights just so we can end up being like everybody else. If we say this, we need to sit there and be here in force. We need to say no more gun laws. 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 We have the Constitution and the Second Amendment. And remember, the Second Amendment, the words that Jan Lee had on a t-shirt years ago was, what part of infringed don't you understand? And he mentioned a little while ago about a well-regulated militia. Regulated means to be trained, it means to follow the law. And the law of the land was, leave us alone. Why are you sitting in your mess? You are going to wake up a tiger. There are like I said, 100 million gun owners in the United States. And to get us mad enough, it's not going to be a pleasant thing. If you're going to send out the police and the military, well, they're not going to do it. And you guys who sit there trying to push it, you liberals, you ain't going to have the people to sit there and do it. And I hope they sit there and realize that they can't do it and back off and leave us alone. I personally would like to sit there and be relaxing night right now with a cold beverage and enjoying my Saturday afternoon. I'd also like to have to sit there and spend the last 4 weeks sitting there getting people together. But I cannot stop. And I guess I'm sort of addicted to this. That's where Janet Lee always says she's going to kill me because I pestered her into doing a number of these. Unfortunately, we may have to continue to do this. We have to be vigilant. Because if we're not, these people up here are going to take away our rights. They say they're lawmakers. No, they're not lawmakers. They're supposed to be statesmen. Okay, come in, spend a few weeks sitting there making sure everything's okay. Quit making all these laws. They estimate that every state makes about 400 new laws a year, and then you have people in D.C. making another 400 laws a year. Is that making us more free? No. This is insanity. They keep doing this over and over. Well, we're going to make a law for this, we're going to make a law for that one. Every day we we violate laws because we don't even know they're laws. And they want more taxes to sit there and pay for the laws. Okay, I've spoken enough. I'm going to give a couple of individuals that we have that one of the volunteers, I believe, the gentleman was first. Kyle Crozier.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank every patriot that showed up. You all rock. I'd like to thank everyone in uniform who is willing to stand with the Constitution. You are a rare breed in a corrupt government that has overtaken us. I'd like to start with a quote from President Donald Trump. Good. Take the guns first, go through due process second. President Donald Trump.
Hello.
The tree of liberty is being viciously strangled by the weeds of tyranny. The Democrats and Republicans are working together to destroy our sovereignty, our freedoms, and our Constitution. Make no mistake, we are completely on our own. Other than the said few that I just mentioned, no one wearing a suit will save us, and no one wearing a uniform will save us. We have been massively betrayed and infiltrated by the tyrannical and corrupt. Romney signed a permanent assault weapons ban. Herbert shut down constitutional carry multiple times. Trump has betrayed all of us and fallen to gun control and anti-constitution insanity. We are vastly outnumbered by those who forget the genocide and democide of history. We have no true champions in office, and those in uniform will obey tyrannical orders if they are given. Gun confiscation happened during Hurricane Katrina and is happening in places like Massachusetts as we speak. All of our freedoms are under attack, not just our right to bear arms. Those speaking for freedom are being silenced on many platforms, as well as in public. Our right to privacy has all but been destroyed. Our right to a speedy and fair trial trampled in the name of safety. Our right to personal property obliterated in the name of civil asset forfeiture, eminent domain, and at the stroke of a pen driven by madness and hysteria. It takes 2/3 of all houses and 3/4 of all states to change anything to our Constitution. That has never happened on any of our most valuable freedoms. Therefore, all laws infringing upon them are highly illegal and tyrannical. Anyone who spreads their wings for freedom without government permission has them swiftly clipped. It is time to cast out and imprison all politicians who violated their oath of office by attacking our Constitution and freedoms. Thank you.
We have another speaker here.
I have a book. It's published by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. It's called Gun Control, Gateway to Tyranny. And in it is a synopsis of how the Germans disarmed, the Nazis disarmed the German people and then committed genocide. And also in it is this, well, let me tell you, there was a guy named Christopher Dodd, and he was from New Jersey or Connecticut as a senator. Before he was a senator, this is the senior.
That'll be nice, Dennis.
Before he was a senator, he was a lawyer at the Nuremberg trials in 1946 while they were trying to put away the war criminals. And in his possession, in the 1960s, was the Gun Control Act of 1938 that the Nazis put into place. And in this book that I have, the side by side, the German and the American 1968 Gun Control Act are shown, translated, and that's where we have the 1968 Gun Control Act from, came straight from Nazi Germany through Christopher Dodd. And if every one of you, I don't know if this document is still in, if they still publish it. I just moved a little while ago and I was digging through my things and I found it. I bought it at the last go around back in 1989 or whatever. But if every one of you would go to the JPFO website and get that document and buy it, or buy one or two or three, and take it to your representative, here, your state representatives, and take it to Mike Lee and to Orrin Hatch and to Chris Stewart and the other ones, Mia Love, and give them that and tell them what's in it. I think we would gain some traction there. I hope. Thank you.
Next step is a friend here from the Utah Shooting Sports Council, who is also what would you say, the Black Republicans Against Gun Control.
Thank you for being here. I'm quite pleased to be able to speak to you. I'm quite pleased to be here to speak to you because a year ago, my cancer doctor told me I was going to be dead 9 months ago. But as long as I have a breath, I want to speak to preserving our freedoms. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Those who would substitute their liberty for safety deserve neither. My name is Victor Chanty. I was the first not white person to get an MD in the state of Utah. Not the first black student, the first not white person. After I obtained my MD, I became a forensic psychiatrist and testified in some very well-known national cases, among which one of my cases they made 2 movies about. This is why I want to speak to you about common sense gun control laws. We hear a lot that those who are mentally ill should be, by law, prevented from having firearms. There is no physical sign or symptom of what is a mental illness. For instance, when I graduated from the U in 1974, homosexuality was a mental illness. But over the intervening years, it no longer is. In that intervening years, there was no mental illness called autism, but now there is. The Social Security Administration took it upon itself to declare that anyone who was receiving Social Security benefits and that benefit was paid to an intermediary because that person was found not to be financially competent, they were considered mentally ill and put on a do not buy list. Therefore, it could just as well be that if you're behind paying your credit card bill or you file for bankruptcy, you too could be considered mentally ill. Fortunately, President Trump rescinded that rule, and he was lambasted by the media for allowing the mentally ill to have weapons. In 1789, when the Second Amendment was demanded, there were witches, there were people who were satanically possessed, and there were the insane who had no treatment. And yet, our framers did not put an asterisk after the Second Amendment saying this does not apply to witches, the satanically oppressed, and the insane. Resist the temptation to seek safety in superficial, seemingly sounding good safety laws to infringe your rights. I hope to put the fear of God in you by the next thing I'm about to say. We may well be in the last days when we can ignore protesting by calling our representatives in Congress and in the state government. Does anyone know the recipe to cook a frog? You put the frog in cold water and you slowly turn up the heat. The heat is being escalated daily, slowly, drip by drip, but it's becoming far more apparent now. Well, we're concentrating on attacks on the Second Amendment. The hearings with Mark Zuckerberg are poised to restrict our First Amendment rights by law, while a private corporation, be it Facebook, Google, which is Alphabet, and YouTube, and Snapchat, etc., Twitter, they are systematically muting our voices. The best way to eliminate the entire Bill of Rights is to first abridge the second, criminalize the first as hate speech, and the rest will evaporate like the dew in the morning. It is not just politicians which are infringing our rights. Recent articles have been saying, and this is actually being put into effect, if the legislature won't restrict gun rights, let the banks do it. And the banks are following through. The Attorney General of the state of New York put pressure on banks and lending institutions to stop financing, underwriting gun stores, those who are trying to purchase guns, and Visa has said that they are going to obey that suggestion. Bank of America, the fourth largest bank in the United States, has said that they're going to stop financing gun stores. First National, the largest bank in the United States, 2 years ago stopped financing gun stores and gun purchases. So it's not the legislature alone that is putting pressure on us. Mussolini said, as he defined fascism, all within the state, nothing against the state, everything within the state. In this building behind me, in the last legislative session, HB 485 said that if a political party did not accept the way the legislature said their candidates could be selected, that party and that candidate would not be allowed to be on the ballot. The state shall determine what is the proper criteria for a candidate of a political party to use that party's trademarks and goodwill. That's everything inside the state. If the state does not agree with the way the political party chooses that candidate, nothing against the state, everything within the state, that candidate will not be allowed on the ballot. Nothing against the state. This is naked fascism. This is what we have to combat. But we may be in the last days to protest by calling our representatives. We hear a lot of bravado about come and take it, etc. Well, after Hurricane Katrina, lots of people who might have mouthed those words of bravado gave up their guns when they were confiscated. So we can either trust that the bravado will prevail or that law enforcement will not violate their oath. While you speak of come and get it, and I'm not going to allow my gun to be confiscated, I urge you to contact, first of all, know who is your state and federal representative, and to contact them and protest, write letters, emails, phone calls that you disagree if they want to violate your rights. This is the last days that we may have protests. God bless America.
All right, so you can bring this thing down because I'm so short. I thank all of you for coming here, and I'd like to say, I'm going to have a little bit of, what do they call it? I can't think of the word right now. I'm just going to let you know again that I'm with the Utah Unorganized Constitutional Militia. We have a sign-up table over there if you're interested. We're on Facebook. Our page there is UUCM Militia recruiting page. And we are a full patriotic group of people who believe in the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And with that, I again thank all of you for attending here. We have about 15 minutes to clear the area from our permit, which we had to have a permit to be here these days. Members of UUCM, could you help us move all the stuff out that we need to get moved? And again, thank you very much for attending.
All right, that's it.